Now, I don't know if you can answer this question because this actually may be a question best suited for CBPOs, but is the process different for families who present themselves at the ports of entry versus those that are apprehended by Border Patrol between the ports of entry?
Between the ports, we're now referring anybody that crosses the border illegally. So Border Patrol is referring 100% of the people that cross the border illegally to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution. At the ports, that's not an illegal act if they come under the same conditions. But the verification of family relationships is essentially the same on in both instances.
So with this new policy in place, at the point that you're in a situation where you decide to separate the families, where do the minors go?
The decision is to prosecute at 100%. If that happens to be a family member, then the HHS would then take care of the minor as an unaccompanied child.
But can you tell us, because over the past couple of weeks, we've seen reports of families that have been separated, but nobody can tell us where those children are going. Do you know where they're going?
They're referred to Health and Human Services to be placed in a shelter. So
you're telling me that I'm better off asking HHS, or?
Well, yeah, they control the system as it relates to where the shelters are and which ones they send them to, et cetera. And it's their work that will reunite families or place them with a guardian.
This is probably a question for you, Director Cisna. Yesterday, the Department of Justice announced that it was asking the Department of Defense to send 21 prosecutors to assist in the prosecution of people detained pursuant to the new zero-tolerance policy. And within a few short weeks, federal courts along the southern border are now experiencing tremendous backlogs because of this. Border Patrol agents and customs officials do not appear to have the personnel and/or resources necessary to process the new detainees, including minors, and there also appears to be an issue with the lack of space necessary to house all of these defendants sentenced to serve time. What is the administration doing to address these concerns?
I think that's probably better for ICE on the detention issue.
As far as the detention capacity, we're well aware of that. We're working with the U.S. Marshals and DOJ on identifying available detention space. I got my staff working on that along with the department and DOJ. So I think it will be addressed. We want to make sure we don't get back to catch and release. So we're identifying available beds throughout the country that we can use. As far as the question on HHS, under the Homeland Security Act 2002, we're required, both the Border Patrol and ICE, to release unaccompanied children to HHS within 72 hours. So we simply, once they identify within that 72 hours a bed someplace in the country, our job is to get that child to that bed. And HHS is their responsibility to reunite that child sometime with a parent and make sure that child gets released to a sponsor after being vetted.
3 years ago, most of us that are here lived through the issue with unaccompanied minors coming into this country. And to me, I just find it ironic that with the new zero-tolerance policy, what we're essentially doing is creating a new class of unaccompanied minors. And I'll save the rest of my questions when we come back. I would, although we may not see eye to eye on a lot of these things, Director Homan, I'd like to congratulate you on your retirement and thank you for your service as well.
Thank you. And as far as your question or your comment, if they show up at a port of entry and make their asylum claims, they won't be prosecuted and they won't be separated. The department has no policy just to separate families for a deterrence issue. I mean, they're separating families for two reasons. Number one, they can't prove the relationship, and we've had many cases where children have been trafficked by people that weren't their parents. And we're concerned about the child. The other issues are when they're prosecuted, then they're separated.
So I just thank you for clarifying that, sir. Are you saying that with the new zero tolerance policy, that at the ports of entry, that children are not being separated from parents seeking asylum?
Not 100%. What I'm saying is we separate children from parents on two situations. Number one, they don't have evidence that they're actually a parent or legal guardian. And as I said, we've had cases where children were trafficked by people claiming to be parents but weren't. So we want to protect those children. The second issue, if the parent is prosecuted, then we have to separate them because the parent goes to U.S. Marshals and we have to go, the children go to HHS. So it's not a policy based on deterrence. It's a policy based on these two issues, prosecution and can establish a relationship.
And I'll just add, if they choose to use the port of entry, then the prosecution, that's not against the law, so prosecution won't be contemplated in those cases.
Okay, well, I'm out of time.
Yep. Thanks.
I yield back.